Today's session is related to taxonomy of learning. That is the title of that. Uh, Yesterday we spent a lot of time, though almost 2 hours extra in my calculation. But it was necessary because people do have all kinds of questions before we even get started. Generally, this happens in most of the session. You have a lot of pending questions, why this, why that, and so on. We try to address that. But now, when we come to, we talked about the role of outcomes, why they are important, and how it can be integrated into the curriculum. And also, it is a requirement at the national level. So, one doesn't have, even if you have a limited acceptance of the concept of outcomes, you don't have a choice. You have to practice that. Now, when you talk about outcomes, can we classify them in any particular way? For example, if you look at the kind of questions that you ask in the examination, you'll say some questions they describe something or state something, or you will say explain. And then our famous Indian contribution to education exists. You know what it is? That is a speciality of India. Write a short note on. And write a short note on is a horrible question. You write, you have to give marks. No, you have no choice. You can write 1 page, 2 page, or one sentence, still you have to give marks.
It was designed to give the marks.
Yes. So, the first thing that my strong plea to all of you to completely get rid of that question, write a short note. Okay, it has to be a lot more specific and concrete. So again, coming to different kind of questions. Let's say somewhere you will ask, define something, state something, even prove something, or then you go to the next level, like you explain something, compare something, right? That's the next level. Then third, you go to solve a problem. Solve a problem. At least up to that, we all have it in our regular activities. But as you can see, all of them do not fall into the same category, right? Solving a problem is different from simply defining something. So inherently, we know that the outcomes are not the same in all cases. So you have some kind of a classification. And this was the issue that was taken up right back in 1950s in Chicago University, where the whole activity started, this classification. They felt it becomes necessary to classify what the word that you used is behavioral objectives. We use the term outcome is nothing but a behavioral objectives. Can we classify? Can we classify them based on whatever our understanding either from psychology or from any other discipline? So that is where classification is nothing but taxonomy. Though now it has become a common word in higher education. But taxonomy is a word that is used in botany, for example. That's where all your BSc botany people start with that. But what the taxonomy word strict meaning as far as botany is concerned, that cannot be completely 100% used in the case of outcomes. We'll explain the reason for it. Now, the how, you have to go back into to really have a taxonomy of your outcomes. Then you have to go into the word how does a human being function? Is it everything is the same kind? Are there any different domains for us? We have, after all, feelings, right? We have feelings. We are processing information. We are also doing some physical activity, operating something. After all, maybe in engineering you do not operate very much other than pressing a few buttons. But in other disciplines, if you have, let's say, you have a BSc in painting, or BSc in a theater, or you have physical education. If you take all of them, the uh, anything related to movement or the way you use your limbs is also becomes a very important part of dance program. You, so you have different domains of learning. That was recognized right quite early. People broadly classified the domains of learning into first cognitive domain, with which we are more familiar. Cognitive domain means we process information. We process information and act cognitively on that. Cognitively on that means we are also responding either by doing something or by writing something or explaining something like that. That is, we are processing information, receiving and processing information. But then uh, humans actually, if you look at, they make decisions predominantly in the emotive domain. Many times, more than 90% of the time, our reaction to anything is emotional first. And, and that also makes us very efficient. If you don't react emotionally, right, because if you want to react to everything in a logical fashion, you cannot function, you cannot live. For example, you try to cross a road, right? How do you cross a road? We have to somehow estimate what are the vehicles coming at what speed they are coming from both the directions. Can I? How much time do I take? How can I cross? If I want to go through logically, deciding when to cross, you will never be able to cross. Okay, so you react somehow intuitively, emotionally. You react and cross. Otherwise, you cannot live. Okay, we have seen individuals. Uh, Actually, I've seen physically, he's not able to cross the road because he can never come to the conclusion that he can cross because of the traffic. So, so you have these three domains, and the domain where you emotionally react to make decisions based on your emotions, that is called affective domain. So people recognize right in the beginning that these three domains of either call it learning or operating, the cognitive domain, affective domain, and psychomotor domain. Okay? These three people have acknowledged fairly early, maybe even prior to 1950. They've even given those names. So, but our thing, uh, while psychomotor domain is fairly easy to understand, but as far as higher education programs, other like what we are engineering or any science or anything that you take, we are dominantly operating in the cognitive domain. We are receiving and processing information. Okay, so we right now will restrict ourselves to the cognitive domain. Though, as I said, affective domain is important, if not more important than even cognitive domain. Because yesterday we were talking about getting the attention of the student, right? And attention is the most precious commodity that you have. And if I don't have the attention, doesn't matter what you do, the purpose is not served. And attention has a very dominant affective component. But how do you handle that? We do not have an easy answer to that. So we will not go towards that. And there is another issue for us to communicate with one another and also even have a dialogue. Let's say if you are trying together, two people are trying to together design a question paper. What kind of question should we give? Under what classification do we do? How many questions of this type? How many questions of this type? Even to have that dialogue, you require a common language. And that common language is provided by this field taxonomy of learning. And the another issue is even in the cognitive domain, we are restricting though to our cognitive domain. There is still an issue we do not know what can be the basis for classifying. Because you are talking about what happens in the brain, right? How is the brain processing the information? It is not as if that you have in the cognitive part of the brain that some lines are drawn. What happens in this region is this, and what happens in this region is this. There is no such understanding at all. So what happens is the taxonomy that is proposed by anybody is approximately trying to understand, classify. It's actually superficial classification, not corresponds to what happens in the brain. Because we don't know what is happening in the brain. For example, if you want to recall anything from your long-term memory, the information is not located in one place. It is located in multiple places somehow very quickly, that is all synthesized together, and you recall a particular event or a picture or anything that you do. So we will not go into, though a little understanding of the brain is good for all faculty. It's good that at least you do not commit certain mistakes. Let me slightly deviate here. You all get students who are in the impressionable age. Okay? You are 18 years to 22 years. That is the range that you have. And you always have issues with students, right? On various fronts. For example, why does it happen? It has been established, it has been proven that when the brain evolves physiologically, the cognitive part will grow right up to the age of 23, 25. Okay? If you draw your reasoning ability, logical ability, if you take, it will keep growing up to the age of 25. Whereas the emotional growth, if you feel strongly about something, it already happens fully by the time you are 16 or 17. So what happens, students in the age with whom you are interacting, so they're, in one sense, they make their decisions more dominantly in the logical part hasn't grown sufficiently. But all their decisions, their actions are based on their emotion. And that is where you have all the issues. Okay, as faculty, you will have to understand how do you deal with students who have grown emotionally, but not adequately logically. And that is true everywhere, anywhere in the world. So I again urge you, there are any number of books these days available on understanding a little bit of the brain, either at physiological level or what happens in it. There are some books specifically for faculty also. You don't have to get into too much of physiology. Okay, coming to, so even as cognitive level, we cannot draw very strict lines saying that activity that happens here, I call it by such and such. But it is broadly based on some observations, people come to some conclusions, and that is how we have some taxonomy. But because of the very complex underlying thing, namely our brain, so there is no single taxonomy of learning that is universally accepted. There are plenty of taxonomies that were proposed. There are a few popular ones. We will just make a list of them and show you. But to start with, what we have to, accept, there are three domains of learning: cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. And there is no one single taxonomy that can completely answer your questions. Okay. And this kind of, you cannot call it inaccurate, but the kind of limited understanding that we have, to that extent, when you draw a line between two cognitive levels, I may not be able to be precise even within one specific taxonomy. Okay? That you have to accept. Many times you have to make decision whether an activity belongs to this category or that category will depend on the context and depends on the understanding of the teacher as well. Okay? So these are the broad things that you uh, have already explained all this. The, the taxonomies that exist which are popular are used also. Or one is this Bloom taxonomy, which you must have heard, probably read some lectures. And then you have solar taxonomy, which has been quite popular in Commonwealth countries, especially Australia, Hong Kong, England, and so on. They actually swear by it. They outright reject Bloom's taxonomy. Then there is a Fink taxonomy, and there is a Gagne taxonomy, which is a little older. And then you have Marzano and Kendall. And people can list many more, but these are the popular ones. It is right now fashionable, especially in school education, to talk about this Marzano and Kendall. So, so you shouldn't be surprised when somebody says, no, your taxonomy is all wrong, and we have a better one. Okay? We'll explain. We are not going to spend a lot of time in comparing all of them.
But which is popularly used, sir, across you?
If you go by pure numbers, obviously it will be revised Bloom's taxonomy. Okay. We have to qualify revised Bloom's taxonomy. If you go to Google and say Bloom's, you get the older version, and people swear by that also. So what we said, all taxonomies are attempts to give structure to the cognitive processes involved in learning. Such attempts are based on observations of learning behaviors and the limited understanding of how brain functions. That is a summary of learning. So whenever you look at taxonomy, you have to keep that in mind. We are operating in a realm where we have limited understanding. So this also we have mentioned. Any given task tends to be generally dominant in one of the three psychological domains: cognitive, affective, or psychomotor. And cognitive domain deals with a person's ability to process and utilize information in a meaningful way. We want to just talk about definition. Whereas the affective domain relates to attitudes and feelings that result from or influence the learning process. So obviously that is important. If somebody's, we all know, not somebody says, you can't be expected to like every subject to the same level, right? You are taking some 30 odd courses, 30, 40 courses. Do you think anyone will like all subjects equally? So what is meant by liking or not liking a subject? All are important. All are very precise and they are very structured. There is no ambiguity about anything. But we like and dislike. And that is the affective one. So if I don't like the subject, I can't be made to learn that properly. So affective domain keeps coming to you all the time, but we still do not know how to handle that systematically. And then psychomotor domain involves manipulative or physical skills, and generally even language is brought into this category somehow. Language is also considered part of psychomotor. And the classification here is for focus and convenience. It is not as if, again, some lines are drawn in the brain and the only it will happen in the cognitive domain, only it will happen in the affective domain. Practically, every experience that you have will have all the three domains simultaneously present, but to varying degrees. Okay, there is nothing like pure cognitive activity, pure affective activity, nothing like that. Okay, that again you should remember. Okay, just to picturize, dominantly cognitive when you are involved in it, dominantly. Okay, if you want to have dominantly, you can say affective. Maybe one can get a better picture than this. And you can have dominantly psychomotor. But you cannot say there is no cognitive activity, there is no cognitive aspect, there is no affective aspect in the activity that we have captured. But it is dominantly psychomotor. Okay, physical skills are dominant. And we have many things which are fully integrated. That means all the three are present equally at high levels. So if you take any of these performances, you can certainly consider they're all dominantly, all three domains are present. And you can also have in a single experience varying domains. If you are writing an exam, first 85 minutes, it's like this, and the last 5 minutes will be hair pulling range. Okay, so you can have changing domains in the same activity. So we come to the actual Bloom's taxonomy. They have see these activities. One should not take it very light. It hasn't been proposed by one or two people in one paper like that. For example, uh, it's actually known as Bloom's taxonomy. But Bloom is the chairman of a committee and worked with a huge number of professors across the country over 3 year period before they are able to come to. And if you look at that original document, they're so very careful in writing what they mean, to what extent it can be used, and they always called it work in progress. So any taxonomy that you would consider, it is still work in progress. Because we haven't reached a stage where authoritatively we can say this is what is happening in the brain. If you want to say, can it be improved from the present one? Possibly yes. And people attempted that, but everything has to be accepted by a much larger group of people, right? So the original taxonomy of 1956 is they call it knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. I will not spend time on this. And the choice of the words. For example, when this was presented, it was communicated to people at all levels. People were not very happy. They said in everyday work, in everyday activity in a classroom, at school level or at higher level, we keep using the word understand, right? First question you ask, did you understand? And you don't find the word understand in the original text. People were unhappy not having that word at all. Actually, the reason why they did not include the word understand is because they said it's not measurable. It is not observable and measurable. So they had to convert this word understand into a measurable and observable activity before they could bring it. So the revised taxonomy brought the understanding to this, and they spent a lot of time in defining that word in a measurable fashion. So again, I will not go through what were the limitations observed in this and how people reacted. We will go directly into the next version of that, which we call it as revised Bloom's taxonomy. And this has happened in year 2001. 1955 it is proposed. For more than 45 years, people have worked with it and observed, gave critiques, tremendous amount of feedback has come in. Based on that, they formed one more committee. By the time Professor Bloom was no more, but only one member remained, that is Krathwal. So Krathwal and Anderson and a group of people together, they have revised the Bloom's taxonomy in a much more, for me at least, much more in an acceptable, easy fashion. So revised Bloom's taxonomy is what our concern is. First thing is, it is two-dimensional. Two-dimensional in the sense, uh, you are performing a cognitive activity, like explaining, comparing, solving a problem, something like that. But on what? On some knowledge, right? So they consider the cognitive activity is different from the knowledge involved. So to that extent, they had to make it two-dimensional. But many of the other taxonomies that I mentioned, all other ones, they're unidimensional. So they worked hard trying to capture everything in single dimension. But once you make it two-dimensional, it becomes a lot more comfortable to work. At least it's a lot more convenient. Okay? So two-dimensional nature of revised Bloom's taxonomy allows more natural expression and outcome statement. And typical outcome statement has some subject matter content, which is presented as a form of noun or noun phrase, and a description of what is to be done with or to the content. So you are performing an activity. That's why you have to use a verb. Explain is a verb. Okay. So you are performing an activity. So there is a verb associated. Content, you are dealing with some knowledge. So there is that is a part of the noun. Take a simple example. State Maxwell's equations. So stating is a cognitive activity. Whereas Maxwell's equations is a content, subject knowledge. So this is the knowledge element. This is a very, what we call, natural, right? This classification naturally occurs. Maxwell's field equation, subject matter content, or what we call, belongs to the knowledge category. So now we have to classify in a two-dimensional one the cognitive activities and knowledge categories. That's what we have to do. So when we talk about taxonomy, we have to talk about both. But these two, in a unidimensional one, you are not differentiating that. Actually, if you look at solo taxonomy, which is quite popular, I still don't feel comfortable, though we have books and books written, many school people, they do process that. In writing meaningful outcomes in this context of solo taxonomy, at least I found it more difficult. Okay. Now, knowledge dimension of revised Bloom's taxonomy. They had initially three categories. All the three are self-explanatory. We'll spend more time on them. Factual knowledge, conceptual knowledge, and procedural knowledge. We can all relate to on our day-to-day activity, these three. But the fourth category, while acknowledged, people did not understand the importance of that in the beginning. Right now, people understand a lot better about the fourth category and its role. Unless you are able to pay attention to that, you are not going to solve some of the problems. We will spend a little time on that. So the importance of the fourth category was not realized well at the time of handbook. It is assuming increasing significance these days as more evidence from learning theories confirm the importance. So, if you say educational psychology research, if you look at that, they understand the importance a lot better. Now, one of the things you have to say, how do I improve this knowledge category? Namely, the metacognitive knowledge, how do you address that? And especially if you have poor, what do you call, poor performing students, And lack of metacognitive knowledge is a more dominant part of their inability to learn. So if you want to look at work with students who are less performers, unless you pay attention and how do you deal with that, you cannot help. Okay. So there are some changes that happened from original taxonomy. The knowledge that word right from the beginning when I was working with it, we felt uncomfortable. But anyway, it is replaced officially by the word remember and comprehend and understand. Comprehend was replaced by understand. And then synthesis was changed to create, and the order of synthesis and these two are changed. Okay. And now the classification is also shifted to verb form. So you go to verb form means apply, analyze, evaluate, you will use that. And create was made a higher level than the evaluate. Now in the revised taxonomy, you have, which I have already shown, remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. And these are hierarchical in nature. Hierarchical means if I am doing anything with regard to uh, apply, for example, the understand and remember activities are implied in that. So I don't have to keep saying understand, apply, understand, and yeah, I don't have to repeat 3 times. When I'm involved in create activity, all the 5 cognitive activities are likely to be involved. Okay, that is hierarchical classification. Okay, uh, as I already mentioned, people had a bit of objection to the original use of the word understand, but now it is converted into much more actionable word. Now this is where the problems start coming. If you look at all the 6 words, we use those words in our day-to-day language. They're not anything different, right? Analyze, create, evaluate. We use all of them. But when you are using in the context of revised Bloom's taxonomy, they have very specific meaning. Because you cannot say in the same tone, revised Bloom's taxonomy and use these words the way you please. For example, as I mentioned, uh, education field is one where we do not have a standardized language. We don't have the terms problem. The same way we don't use the words. So we use them very loose. We think that we have understood and we are being precise, but we are not. And most of the times the problem comes with the word evaluate and analyze. So my plea with all of you is to spend some time in truly understanding what these words evaluate and analyze, how you can make use. Okay, we have seen endless number of mistakes were done by all kinds of colleges at all levels. Not only in India, elsewhere also. They've all done very, very poor judgments or poor outcomes they have written because you don't understand those terms the way they have defined. It is not my definition. It is the way revised Bloom's taxonomy has defined those terms. Hopefully we'll come back to this detail later. And there are other 2 words which people use on the drop of the hat at all places, in all meetings. We must train our students to critically think without knowing what the damn critical thinking is. You can't, if you ask them to define what do you mean by critical thinking, I haven't seen anyone coming with a very immediate answer. But we use that word happily. And same thing about problem solving. But then you can complain about Bloom's taxonomy, saying that they have not included critical thinking and, and problem solving. But is it true? We will explore that. First thing is, it is like putting a bracket around two or three items in the revised Bloom's taxonomy and call it by another. Okay, we'll come to that. We'll justify that. Incidentally, there is one organization called criticalthinking.org. Okay, a large number of professors across various universities in USA formed a group and they talk about how to promote critical thinking. Okay, and they have a lot of publications as well. If you want, you can procure those books, and they will talk about analytical thinking, critical thinking, and so on. And I went through quite a few of their publications and what they do at their website. So whatever I'm going to talk about, critical thinking, it comes from that. And they keep continuing how to promote what is the there is a, for everything there is also a quality of your thinking. Just because it comes under the category of critical thinking doesn't mean that it is high quality critical thinking. So they define what is meant by quality, how do you measure, how do you train people for critical thinking, what kind of exercises that you need to do. All that they have given plenty of information. So, so we need to explain why these two terms do not find in their place directly in the revised Bloom's taxonomy. And I've already explained there is a hierarchy of these cognitive processes.
But what is your opinion, Professor? Whether critical thinking and problem solving can be brought in this Bloom's
Yes,
taxonomy?
yes, that I will explain. That if you are able to, the only issue is we have designed a system in India, especially with our hundreds of colleges affiliated to university, we ensured none of those things happen. We officially made sure. We ensured that they do not happen. Why that happens? Because of our stupid centralized examination system. Simple. And not trusting anybody. So your internal evaluation has always to remain until recently at 20% weightage. Now I think people are shifting up to 40%, 50, which is good. So a little bit of trust level somehow has increased because of operational issues rather than any other issue. But in general education, general programs, that is BA, BSc, that hasn't happened yet fully. Okay, so we'll come to that. And as I said, there is you do not have a very precise classification of activities according to the 6 categories. If you use a word like compare, compare is an action verb belonging to understand. But it can also be somehow as part of analyze as well. Or you use the word identify. Identify can be part of understand as well as analyze. So what it is, you have to make a judgment based on the context. Teacher will have to make has to make a judgment. Okay, to that extent, these are not very precise. Because otherwise you have to coin new words. New action verbs you have to coin. And then you say this means that and you have to use only that. So if you want to compare, because unfortunately you have to compare like this, as I said, still quite a few people want to go by the old Bloom's taxonomy. Revised taxonomy has several advantages over the original taxonomy. We have already said it is 2-dimensional. And We use in our activity revised Bloom's taxonomy, and we strongly recommend that you stay with revised Bloom's taxonomy. Don't try to go back to the original simple Bloom's taxonomy. Now we'll quickly go through this, each one of these six cognitive levels. Remember is something very easy to understand. That is, remembering is retrieving relevant knowledge from long-term memory. In the brain, there are two types of memories, working memory and long-term memory. We are not going to get into that operation. Um, for example, in working memory size is considered to be somewhere between 5 to 12 characters. Characters means not the English character, but 12 elements, let's say. That's all. 7 to 12. And some people have only 5 or 5, 7. So they will have a lot of difficulty while learning. And there are even exercises, programs available for children who have low what do you call working memory to increase it, let's say, from 7 to 9. There are programs available. Because so people can be trained also. Maybe more difficult once you age, but at child level, they can be trained. And if any of your children who have problems, you can think of that, where the issue is related to smaller, short working memory.
Is it that correlated to your critical thinking?
No, nothing. It's a physiology. And the information has to come from long-term memory, which is stored in multiple places in the brain. And it is brought to the working memory. You can only operate on those 7 characters. And quickly you have to replace them by some more information and process them. So if you have a small working memory, you have to keep on bringing from that and throw this out and keep processing. It obviously processing may not be that effective. Okay, now obviously remembering knowledge is necessary for working in anything. You cannot every time what is 2 into 3, you cannot refer to the table, right? Multiplication table you cannot refer to. Now you can keep on asking for everything on the Google these days. So remembering is important, but there are 2 types of, for every one of these cognitive levels or cognitive processes, we use these 2 words interchangeably. Cognitive process, because it's an activity, or cognitive level. There are 2 sub-processes in this. One is remembering. Like when you say state something, state a principle, you have to recall from long-term memory and state it. But sometimes a simpler version is recognized. I give you 4 or 5 choices and say recognize the correct. Both are, you are now comparing it with some already what you have stored, and then you are saying whether it is right or not. So you have recognize and recall. So recognize is a slightly easier activity compared to recalling, right? Recognizing is easier. Once whether I say whether this is a chair or not, yes, once you look at it, you will recognize and say it is easier. Whether I give you verbal description and say whether that constitutes a chair, is different. So, how do I characterize remember? How do I characterize remember? We use these action verbs. We call them action verbs. Recognize, recall, list, tell, locate, write, find, mention, state, draw, label. These are the action verbs that we use. And in fact, we can make a list of action verbs for each category, each cognitive level. And they can be prepared, you can actually put them on a single paper sheet. And I consider this is one sheet that every faculty member can stick on their work table. Because for many of your activities, it becomes so very easy to start a first sentence. What is the word with which you start when you are designing your questions or writing some notes? You start with that, and instead of scratching your head about what word do I use, you look at that and pick one. It becomes makes your life very easy. So please,
Many autonomous institutions are following it.
okay,
In the board of examination also, what happens when they see the question paper and evaluate,
yeah,
when they write down the what is the Bloom's taxonomy, what they have required, many times there will be no matching.
yes,
People would have gone wrong. If you have this check sheet, it
yes.
really works out.
And when you start something with a word, with an action verb that is not there in that, then you will say something is an issue you have to address. Okay, we'll show you examples which lead you to that kind of thing. So if you have activities like state the condition for maximum efficiency of a transformer, okay, that's a remember type of activity. State the assumptions of working stress method, limit stress method in connection with the design of concrete structures. That is also a remember type of activity. Just because they're high sounding does not make it any a higher level activity. Okay, please remember. And draw the stress strain curves for concrete in compression under ideal test conditions and laboratory test conditions. That is also remember. Okay. Or generic ones. Name the. You can dot, you can write anything in that. How many like that? So these are the examples that you can, this is how you can create examples belonging to every topic, every outcome that you are going to deal with in your study. Coming to understand, first of all, while we use this understand word very in a loose way, uh, in our day-to-day interactions, but we require a little precise. So, what is understanding is constructing meaning from instructional messages. But it looks like complicating what I've already understood. Okay, so precisely what is happening in the process of understanding is some message is given to you, either in the classroom or in a textbook or somewhere on the screen, anywhere something is presented to you. You are constructing meaning out of that. And how do you construct meaning out of that? For example, if half a page description is given to you, if I am able to convert into a, let's say, two sentences capturing the important information, that means I have processed that information and convert it into the way I give meaning to that. The way you give meaning to something may be different from what other person gives. Especially this happens a lot more in the case of humanities and social science subjects. Whereas engineering and science subjects, you don't give that kind of leeway. You require to be precise. Okay? Instructional messages can be verbal, the way, for example, the way I am speaking, or pictorial, or graphic, or symbolic, or multiple equations. Okay? The messages can come in any fashion. And the instructional messages are received during lectures, demonstrations, field trips, performances or simulations, in books or computer monitors, wherever you get. This is what is involved to understand.
It can be include models also. Suppose we have a model of a spillway. So student, I will show him. I will ask him to
Yeah, sure.
models can also.
The demonstration. Demonstration.
Change
Sir, one more question. Sir,
Yes, sir.
I have one small question, sir.
Yeah, please.
this levels L1, L2, L3 goes.
I would
How
prefer,
to use the weightage for the question?
no,
For example,
wait,
if I am asking L1, L2 level, will the weightage will be more as compared to L3 or L4? They have given some guideline 20%, 30%, but I am not happy with it.
no, those are not meaningful to me at least. Okay, I don't consider it important. First of all, I would not try to use the word L1, L2, L3.
Okay.
You use, after all, these are not very long words, right? They are simple, straight words. Yes. And how much weightage you give to questions belonging to each category
Yes.
is subject dependent and the way you have written your CVs.
Okay. There is no.
There is no absolute percentages that you, if you are giving like that, it is wrong.
That's what I am asking.
It is wrong. Okay. And we are not including a session on assessment or planning your assessment.
No, no.
That will be another 2-3
Okay,
hours.
you know, sir, that question comes
Yes.
to mind. What is
Yes,
L1?
you should not.
Okay.
There is no absolute weightage.
But is there any specific word, sir, when I use understand, as you told for remember, is there any specific words when I design the courses for understanding this one?
Yeah,
Demonstrate.
that is the next slide. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, there are people spend a lot of time in trying to understand what understand is, and you have 7 sub-processes identified under this. These are interpret, exemplify, classify, summarize, infer, compare, explain. No, go back to this. Okay. Now, I can open it. I keep this. Maybe from here I can. Oh, yes. Okay. Let us look at the interpret is the first level. Changing from one representation to another. Like if I give a verbal description and say, convert into a mathematical one, or draw a picture from verbal description, like a block diagram. That is a kind of interpretation. Or you are translating one form of information to another form of information. Okay? And then exemplify, which is very easy to understand. When something is given, give specific example or illustrate of a general concept or principle. That is to give an example of, which is nothing difficult to understand. Then you are classifying, which means recognizing that a specific instance belongs to certain category. Okay? So it is the complementary of exemplify. You give an example, or you give a specific example and say what category does it belong. So these two, all three are understood. And then you are also talking about summarizing. Summarizing would mean like either abstracting or generalizing. If you are abstracting something from a given thing, that is also understood. And next one. we can- Yeah, I cannot. The infer, abstracting a concept or principle from a set of examples. This we are involved. A related process is to use this infer principle to create a new instance. And an example of executing a cognitive process associated with apply, which we will elaborate later. So inferring and executing are often considered together in cognitive classes. That is, you infer something and then execute something. So they're all execute belongs to apply, the next level. And you are inferring uh, from a given set of examples. Compare is easy to understand. Compare A with B with regard to a variety of characteristics. And then finally explain. A student can construct and use cause and effect model. Cause and effect model of a system to explain a phenomenon or to determine how a change in one part of the system affects the other parts. So you are now talking about what is the relationship between, let's say, variable x and variable y in a given description. That is explanation. Or create a model, mathematical model is explanation. Okay? So this is a fairly very wide-ranging activity explanation to talk. The model may be derived from a formal theory when you are, or maybe an empirical model, or assessment could include reasoning, troubleshooting, redesigning, and predicting. So you can make this explanation type of activity fairly rich, depending on how many elements you are going, how many stages you are going to get them involved in. So explanation can keep going on, can become very wide, but it is still an understand activity. And also, when you compare it with analyze, it kind of borders into that. So when it shifts uh, from understand to analyze, sometimes it's difficult to say when exactly it happens. But that is where the faculty member, depending on the context and the subject involved, and with the kind of experience that you have in using the revised Bloom's taxonomy, you will have to complete it. So you may not be able to have an absolute answer for a few things, but that should not be any excuse saying that for not using Bloom's taxonomy. So summarizing that, you have understand you have action verbs for each one of the sub processes. So you interpret for interpreting, translate, paraphrase, represent, clarify, you use these verbs. Exemplify, illustrate, or instantiate. Uh, classify, classify, categorize, and subsume. And this is where, if you want to communicate with one another more precisely, vaguely, you have to have a rich vocabulary with you, a richer vocabulary with you, and spend time in trying to see what each one of the you possibly have heard all these words, but now they have very specific meaning. So it is worthwhile for any teacher to spend time in using all these words in the proper context. It will be good to come. It will provide a good basis for communication among the faculty and students. So these are all the action verbs that you use. Now sample activities and questions like explain why in DC machine flux per pole decreases with increasing load. You can ask a question like that. Or compare memory map diode and L4 map diode techniques. I'm sure you would have asked these questions. Explain the use of virtual base class. What would happen to the performance of searching using binary search tree as the number of insertions and deletions keep increasing? And or you can have generic ones, write a brief outline one, or distinguish between, provide an example of. They are all come under the category of understanding. Okay. Any comment, question on with regard to understand? If something is not clear, please feel free to ask.
For example, sir, for this case only, can I ask question like why corrosion takes place in a humid atmosphere? It can come under this. Why can come?
Why can come, yes. Yeah. If you want to make sure for yourself, you can reword it
Yes, sir.
using the action verbs here
I agree.
and see whether it comes. And if you want, you can go back to your why. You can ask that. Now comes the apply. This is easier to understand or easier to work with. There are two things. One is you are using a procedure to perform an exercise or to solve a problem. You are using a procedure. Somebody gives you a procedure, you should know how to use that procedure. Like, let's say, determine the Laplace transform of this equation. So there is a procedure that you explain how to do that, and the student will have to know how to apply the procedure, right? Which is a fairly straightforward. But it is also closely linked with what we call procedural knowledge. Uh, just because you know the procedural knowledge doesn't mean that you can perform that activity. Let's say a stage is take an integral. That is a part of the procedural knowledge. But then I don't know how to take the integral of that particular term. So there is still that activity that you have to perform. But there is also another stage of apply. That is, I can have an activity where I'm not telling you what is the procedure to be used. I'm asking you to solve the problem. So it is a two-step process. I should first find out which procedure to apply and then apply that procedure. And to determine what procedure to apply may take a lot more effort. And there can be variations in that. First of all, maybe the procedure that I need to apply was not adequately understood by me, or it was not adequately presented in the classroom or in the textbook. Or there may not exist a procedure right now, which I have to modify an existing procedure, which it will keep on growing like that. Okay, sometimes it may require a little modification because in a particular range an equation is not applicable, let us say. So you have to modify you have to do something with your assumption to apply that procedure. Or you may have to completely identify, rather create a new procedure. So it can go on right up to the create level. But that's why we differentiate between the uh, the right procedure is already known, is a part of the question that you asked, and where the procedure is not explained to you. That's why we call it two processes: execute and implement. Execute is procedure is already part of the statement of the question itself. And implement is procedure to be used is not part of the question. Simple. Okay, so implement can go on, can be stretched by drilling. The action verbs are both for execute and implement: determine, calculate, compute, estimate, solve, draw, modify, anything. For example, if you take the word draw is part of apply, but draw can also be part of sometimes remember, sometimes part of understand as well. Drawing a picture. From verbal description, you draw a block diagram. Or directly say, give block diagram of something which you have presented to you in the classroom and you are reproducing from the note. So when you look at a verb like that, draw, it can belong to, depending on the context, to different cognitive levels. Now, I will not read all this, but these are the type of problems that we ask actually in the examination. You give numerics, and then ask them to solve. So sometimes it starts with the action verb, that is calculate. Sometimes you describe everything and then ask the question, calculate or determine something. Okay? So these are the two examples, both from electrical kind of thing. No, one is mechanical. Or otherwise activities like determine, compute. You start with the action verb and do that. Where do you think, right, let's say, write a program in computer science, which we ask, what does it belong
Understand?
to? Write a program to solve something. Sure.
But they're not implementing.
Huh?
But they're not implementing.
But
It is already again it is defined.
no, identify. Say calculate the area, write a program to determine the area of a rectangle. I didn't give you any procedure.
Understand.
So the whole problem, the whole problem in computer science is that we have reduced the entire thing into understand. Because teacher gives a program on the board and we have to reproduce the goddamn program. So you prevent students from learning how to program. Officially. Officially say, I don't want you to learn programming. That is the implementation of programming course. Because you can write the program in endless number of ways. When you do so, you don't want him to do that. You don't want him to learn something that belongs to create. I insist that you do it as reproduction. Just simply remember, not even understand. So please, what is happening in the kind of system that we have, because everybody will have to pass. Failure is not an option in most of the colleges. So what do? We reduce cognitive levels all the way from create down to remember. So now you can understand what is happening in a system through Bloom's taxonomy. Right?
Sir, some of the questions you have shown,
Uh,
if they say, suppose I give this question and ask them to classify the Bloom's taxonomy, where it belongs. It is not possible to put it in one category.
no, but we don't ask those questions to students. That will be basis for discussion among faculty. That I agree. That we
Because
said.
somewhere I see, we give a set a question paper
Uh,
and then COP, we give two columns. What is the COP weight belongs to this question?
okay.
And then at the last Bloom's taxonomy mentioned in one college I saw. So they will ask that. So when I see the student
First of all, why should students come into picture? I cannot understand.
student belong, but some accreditation process and all that, they said they suggested that. Okay, in your question paper, whether you're covering.
Then I have endless number of instances where people have suggested all kinds of things without properly understanding what the Bloom's taxonomy
So
is.
they give that, and Bloom's taxonomy also they separate that. It almost falls into four categories. only. All the active verbs etc. will be listed and any of this.
I can't answer that. If I insist on making all the possible errors in every activity, how can we respond to that?
And I thought the revised Bloom's taxonomy maybe 3 or 4 categories.
Ah. But it's unfortunately 6 categories. You have to stay with that. Okay. So this is not very difficult to design questions in every subject you have. And in fact, it's good to have numerics as much as possible involved in this. Because the advantage is, there is another issue. If you repeat a question, either of a problem that I solved in the classroom, or immediately previous examination, what happens is, I have converted every question into remember.
Yes.
Because I have to just mark the answer to that that comes from the guide. So officially I have converted every question, doesn't matter. On paper you can say it belongs to create, but effectively it is remember. because it's reproduction and the question is predictable. Okay, so the way you practice your assessment has the ability to convert from all cognitive levels into one single remember. So if you want to have choices of questions, if you incorporate numerics, if I mark the answer for the first question and I different, let's say 1000 I convert into 900, I can't reproduce the answer, right? I have to again at least know the procedure and implement the outcomes. So if there are as many numerics as possible, I can create a wide range of questions. This is where the difficult part comes. Analyze. Again, analyze is a word that all of us seem to be familiar with, though we don't understand what it means. We use it liberally. I will not go through the exercise of asking you to define analyze right now. I will reserve that slot for some other. But here, we are not debating. We are only saying that this is how revised Bloom's taxonomy defines what is meant by analysis. What does it do? Involves breaking given material into its constituent parts and determining how the parts are related to one another and to an overall structure. Looks very complex sentence, but what is involved is uh, there are three sub-processes. Maybe we will understand better through these three sub-processes. One is differentiate, the other is organize, the third one is attribute. Okay, what is this differentiate? For example, when verbal description is given, you distinguishing relevant parts or important parts from unimportant parts are presented of the presented material. Because sometimes information is presented to you, some parts are totally relevant, some parts are less relevant to the whatever cause that we have. Let's say you are looking at a traffic problem. You can give example of that. I can say when people wake up at 6 o'clock, uh, when they come out of the house, the first person they encounter is a guy from Zomato. Let's say I make that statement as a part of traffic issue. Now, obviously, is that relevant? Sometimes we are able to prove it is also relevant. Actually, a friend of mine said the first good morning that he has to say is to the Swiggy lab in the morning, and then you can't cross the road even at that time because there are so many Swiggy people going out. Okay, so but now if I present it as a part of your traffic problem, you may say it is important, or sometimes you may say not so very important. So as you can see, whenever a problem is presented to you, you have to identify first of all what is unrelated information that is incorporated or its importance. So that is a part of differentiating process. For example, when you say that I'm doing analyzing activity in my course, am I doing anything like that with respect to my course or my subject? For example, when you are trying to, if you want to address PO2, like formulating a problem, yes, this is involved, but we are not involved in formulating a problem at all. None of the courses are designed for formulating. And sometimes, even to formulate a problem from a description, we are not designed for that in the sense I have to give a half a page, 1 page description from which you have to make these conclusions. My examination process do not permit that kind of thing. Okay, so differentiating is first level of analysis. Whereas then you are having identified relevant and less relevant and irrelevant information. Then I go through the process of organizing. Building a systematic and coherent connections around pieces of information. Okay, these are the output variables, these are the input variables, these inputs are affecting these outputs, this kind of thing. If I am able to come with that, that is it, I am organizing. And then you also talk about attributing. Attributing means there is a point of view. I am determining a point of view, bias, values, and intent underlying presented material. Like we talk to sometimes Bangalore traffic people who are in charge. But when they solved a what do you call, they were trying to, they solved some problem and they realized later that they have not solved it properly. That is what happens when you talk about attribute. When you are planning at a junction how the vehicle should move, the pedestrians are unimportant. Let's say you design it in such a way, pedestrians are unimportant, and you don't give them, you give them a 6 inch space to move around. And obviously, that's a point of view. When they designed, they gave importance only to the vehicles. Okay, attribution. That is called attribution. And this kind of thing happens a lot more in other subjects like giving newspaper article. What is the view of the you? All of you know when you read a newspaper article, oh, this is written by BJP guy or Congress guy. We readily attribute that, right? We are able to identify the points of view from which it is written. So you have this analysis activity. I can't find easy examples in engineering subjects, which can be actually are taught in the classroom, or you can ask questions in the examination. Whereas a drop of the hat you can ask in any of the social science, politics, you name it, psychology. I can ask any number of questions that go into it. In fact, the humanities and social sciences, they address a lot more of all the 6 categories of Bloom rather than engineering subjects. Engineering or even science subjects. That is partly because the knowledge with which we are dealing with is more precise. There is no ambiguity, at least at the level that we are dealing with. We are not working at the frontier levels of science or engineering, right? It's very fairly well established, well treated, and there are many times there are no ambiguities at the level at which we are doing in a classroom. Maybe in a project, yes, but not in the classroom. So these are the action verbs that we can use for differentiate, organize, and attribute. Once again, some of them maybe you have heard, but you do not use them in day-to-day language. You have to bring them into your day-to-day language. That's what.
These action verbs becomes difficult when I'm asking question other than the project.
Hmm?
When I'm asking a question, analyze part becomes very difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult, yes. So you do not address analysis at all. In most of the engineering subjects, there is no analysis. When I make a statement like that, it becomes, everybody will be aghast, right? Why you're analyzing all the time?
Then how to bring this component into the assessment?
The only way you have assignments. Because any activity belonging to this will take more time. It doesn't fit into what we call limited time examination. Because you cannot ask one question only in a 1.5 hour exam, right? You have to ask some 7 or 8 questions, and no question can take more than 15-20 minutes. And in 15-20 minutes, you cannot handle an analyze question. The only way you can do, if you want to address that, is through the assignments. And if you legislate saying that internal evaluation should consist of 3 1.5 hour tests in the entire semester, then you have destroyed. You remove the possibility of addressing analysis.
is it like open book testing?
Not necessarily. Open book test kind of thing, not necessarily automatically assure that it is an analysis type. Depends on the way you have written.
But sir, see, designing a question
Mhm.
is a very difficult part.
Yes.
First thing. And second thing, sir, that the course outcome, with respect to the course outcome, with respect to the course objective and program objective, the measurement levels are there, some numerical measurement levels are there. How to map those questions? See, for example, some questions started from discuss that concept, and another form of the question like what is the concept of this? Why this concept of involving like this? So questions started from the word discuss, describe, why, what, this thing. The first kind of a question. And see, the second type of a question, we elaborate full concept. We are writing the full concept of the question, and in the last line, we ask, what is the result of this question?
Okay.
See, for example, 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. Very simple question. Everyone can write. But we are asking a question like apply the mathematical induction to form the generate the solution of this 1 plus 1. And another question is apply the integration and solve this problem, and what is the answer of this integration. So how to map all those forms in a CO, PO, and with respect to the POs and PSOs? How to map, sir?
Yeah, we will mapping to POs and PSOs, we will do it in the afternoon.
And
Okay.
cognition is also involved there. Student cognition and the educators' cognition is also there for transferring different types of the knowledge in between.
Okay, so you are again, once again, if I look at all the sentences, that is because of what you call, uh, we don't have any standard language to communicate with regard to teaching and learning. And the attempt is to use a framework to come with the same kind of words. For example, another person will not ask me exactly the same question, the words the way you asked. Okay? That is because you are using certain words in your own way. And if you do that, you can't have a dialogue, you can't have a discourse at all. So, all your things, for example, from what you have described, there is you can ask a question even in simple thing like, remember, state, let's say, I ask you a question, state all the capital towns of all the districts in Karnataka. It's a simple question. Remember type of question. Do you consider it that people will easily will be able to answer that? It is simple.
It's simple, but
So, but it is difficult.
Ah.
So you should see there is a concept called difficulty and complexity, which we'll explain. So what you are referring to is at some points you are saying you are referring to difficulty. In some places you are referring to complexity. So that's why each concept it has to be internalized related to this so that we are going to talk about the same. When you say you want 1 plus 1 equal to 2,
yes.
is through an induction process, that's a very complex process which the student has to understand or should be familiar with how to present, and then he has to apply that. So to that extent, it is you can even say apply the process of induction to prove this. I can restate the question.
That's correct, sir.
Ah.
But see, the level of understanding of the question for different types of students in the classroom.
Yeah.
Some students are going to solve that question by the integration method. Some students solve by the mathematical induction method, and some simply solve
Yeah.
by
Okay.
that addition something.
Okay.
So that is depending upon the understanding of the student.
No, depending on the way you are asking the question.
Oh.
If you say 1 plus 1 equal to 2, you should prove by induction method, you are precise.
Okay.
But you say prove 1 plus 1 equal to 2, if you just stop there, If somebody applies induction process, I will consider him foolish. Why the heck should he spend all the time when he can write by simple arithmetic? So the way you ask the question makes a difference. Okay. Okay. So these are the action verbs associated with them. In fact, again, one of the things that I would suggest, every department has commonality with regard to the discipline that you are working, right? So as a group, all the faculty should sit together and debate about all these kind of issues. Put a question and say, do you want to call this? Can I improve the statement? And different faculty will be able to give inputs. Mutually, you can learn from others. And if you want, you can call an outside expert, outside person who can work as a, no, I won't call him expert, outside person who can act as a referee, okay, who is familiar with the particular terminology better. And it's good too that everyone comes onto the same page. If you don't, you can't have a discourse. Whether it is mathematics department or electrical engineering, doesn't matter. You have to spend time. In fact, I would strongly suggest that you go through that dialogue a few times, quite a few times. Or everyone can accumulate a few questions, and every semester you can have one round of that kind of discussion among faculty. Because we all look at it from our slightly different perspective. Slightly different. It's not completely different, but slightly different perspectives, and that is where the problem comes. So the activities are questions like examining assumptions, distinguishing relevant from irrelevant facts, recognizing contradictions, questioning deeply, analyze the assumptions made in some SRU or something like that. If you are able to ask such questions, then you are doing analysis. And these cannot be given in the examination hall. Or what I keep using the word limited time examination. 3 hours or 1.5 hours is our measure. In either of them, you cannot ask questions with this. And another issue is, let's say you take attribution. You are asking the opinion. For example, he expresses the opinion, let us say. Well, if the student expresses the opinion, how will you give him marks? And it doesn't agree with the opinion of the evaluator. How will you give the marks? There is a method. If he has used the logic correctly, his assumptions correctly, and he is quoting the relevant data properly, whether he agrees with the evaluator's opinion, it doesn't matter. You have to give the marks. Okay? But all that is a different ballgame altogether compared to what we are doing. And that kind of thing doesn't easily fit into the engineering type of subjects.
So it goes to critical thinking.
Hmm?
It goes to critical thinking what the
Partly. For example, critical thinking as defined, let me complete that, involves analysis, evaluate, and create. All the three.
Integration.
If all the three activities are likely to be involved in critical thinking.
Yes.
So I don't have to come with another one called critical thinking as long as this is it. Okay. Okay. So I have already explained. Use of the word analyze in engineering is a bit risky despite its extensive usage. You should not do that. And it is not easy to design any questions in this category in limited time between examination. And analyze activities can be included in assignments related to case studies, projects, term papers, and field studies. If you are willing to do that and give weightage to that, you can involve analysis.
We have 2 subjects that only 2 questions are asked. So enough time is there. We have minutes.
But evaluation will happen.
Yeah, that will be very dangerous.
Now come to
One
evaluation.
question.
Again, we are using, if you look at questions even in textbooks, the words compute, determine, uh, and analyze, evaluate all are used interchangeably. For example, you call it circuit analysis, right? Analysis, your textbooks titles like that. And it's not analysis at all in the Bloom sense. It is not. It is very precise. And what we mean by analysis there is, when we use it, you, you are determining some unknown variables in terms of known variables, right? All circuit analysis is that you are not vague about what constitutes a particular variable. There is no, we don't address that. There are some known variables and unknown variables you are determining. So it cannot be, in the Bloom's context, cannot be called circuit analysis. Okay? And we also use this word evaluate to mean the same thing. Evaluate the circuit. Electronic circuit, again, evaluate. What does it mean? It means the same thing. Determine unknown variables in terms of some known variables. Right? What is the output? So output, you know what variable it is, and how do you determine the output in terms of the input variables. And there are some constraint variables are also there. Okay? So we have been using the word analyze, evaluate, and calculate all very readily, interchangeably, right up to the textbook.
Sometimes in natural language processing, that is the part of artificial intelligence. In NLP, one area is the machine translation. The big problem arises in the machine translation because semantics and tactic, pragmatic word are there. While we are coming at the semantic, then the problem arises. Just a few minutes ago, you explained the opinion, this word. So we write a question. What is the opinion about this particular sentence, like why, it, and happen? This is a sentence in the natural language processing. Simply change the noun with why. The machine is able to translate properly. But human brain is able to translate properly. That is the cognition level of the question and the conceptual dependency involved over there. So, again, sometimes this problem arises in this taxonomy. How do you resolve this?
That I agree that it is a problem with natural language processing.
Because this is a new area.
Yeah, new area, but there also, till now, people haven't found any solution. If I give you, let's say, 1 page write up you have to prepare, and I have to evaluate the performance of the student according to some rubrics. You can't do that as yet. People even attempted long back in VTU whether you can automatically evaluate the performance of students using some kind of a program. And very quickly after first attempt they gave it up. And I don't think we have reached a stage as yet of that type. Right now, what does the AI tool do? They look at the whole phenomenal amount of access they have to English language statements, and it will compare with that whether it falls within that. That's why whatever solution ChatGPT gives you, you cannot 100% accept it all the time.
That is based on LSTM and ChatGPT. LSTM. But LSTM is not up to that level because forget gate in there. So forgetting is involved in there. But in human brain, that is.
No, human brain is not precise either. Human brain also makes error. I can make a wrong judgment. Because if I have not used some information properly, I come to the wrong conclusion. In fact, we are efficient because we are precise. If you try to be very precise logically, then you will not be that effective. So it is not as if evolution has taken place in a very systematic, logical fashion. The reasoning came into an evolutionary scale much, much later compared to your, let's say, primitive brain of, let's say, reptilian brain. Long. It is a much later addition. rather than it systematically got built into that. You have to accept the way the brain does not, it has evolved at least major three stages people identify it as. Okay, I think we are ready for almost a break. We will just complete these two. Be patient with me for 10 minutes. We will complete the before we move on to the next one. Evaluate. Uh, what, what it means is when I have three solutions with me, okay, three solutions to a problem, which one is better? How do you decide? Is A better than B, B better than C? That kind of determining the desirability of something is evaluation. That's what. So what happens? But on what basis do I decide? If I give two, A and B, and ask you to determine which is better, you require some criteria to decide. If I have a simple criterion, like whether this program produces or uses less amount of CPU time compared to the other one. If I ask, that is very, very narrow, very precise. Such questions also we can ask.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In the algorithm, this kind
Yeah,
of question.
you can ask. But if there are multiple criteria that are there to say A is better than B, or sometimes not one, A, B, C, D you have, and then you have to determine which is the best one, and you have multiple criteria. Then you should know, first of all, identify the criteria according to which you have to compare, and then apply those criteria to all the solutions, and then determine. But then if there are four criteria, A is better than B compared to criteria 1 and 2. And B is better than A compared to the criteria 3 and 4. Which one is better? So you get into the next level question. Then I have to rank order my criteria.
Right.
I have to do the rank order.
Weightages.
And then if some are qualitative criteria and some are quantitative criteria, how do you decide? So the evaluate problem can kind of expand like that, depending on how many criteria you are using, how many you are comparing, and whether they are qualitative or quantitative. Qualitative criteria, if you have to evaluate, you have to use some rubrics, possibly convert them into some kind of a number.
Exactly.
Okay. So evaluate can, like that, can expand into fair, and in fact that's what happens if you are preparing a town plan. Which is better if two companies provide you the solution, each one their own solution. How do you compare? You have to use the multiple criteria to decide. Okay, any large project if you take, you will have wherever there are multiple solutions, multiple correct solutions. Whatever specifications
All
are
are
given,
correct. All four are correct.
correct in terms of specifications.
Ah.
You have given some specifications and they meet the specification. If they don't meet specification, you can throw it out straight away. But if they meet their correct solutions, but there is preferability in terms of some criteria.
Global optimization. There is global optimization.
Environmental kind of a thing.
We do not know. That is, it should get reflected in terms of the criteria. Or it can also be part of your specification itself. Okay? So that is where the sub-processes of evaluate, checking, judgment about consistency. Whether you are trying to compare them on impossible grounds, that you have to first make sure. And then critic, judgment based on criteria and standards. If two incomparable things, if you come and say which is better, like whether apple is better than orange. So obviously they are incompatible things. Okay. So you use the action verbs like this: test, detect, monitor, coordinate. Actually, some of the verbs can belong to other cognitive levels as well. And critic is judging the accuracy, adequacy, appropriateness, clarity, and so on. All these judgments, if you are doing, then you are doing evaluate cognitive activity. Is that okay? Uh, Now, once again, you will have the same issue. It's not very easy to ask questions belonging to evaluate in the examination, but they can be given in assignments and projects. Uh, Possible questions. Maybe you can still take a little part of this evaluate, like check if the given requirements are consistent. That possibly I can give. I can give some inconsistent specifications and ask them whether they're, if you find anything inconsistent in this, identify. That kind of thing I can ask. Okay, is implementation more efficient? Is more efficient than implementation B in terms of? Like that, I can keep filling. Maybe in some few examples you can create in each subject. Okay, then comes the highest level create. Uh, Create is putting elements together to form a coherent or a functional whole. Okay, that's what create. For example, you're all sitting. A chair is a chair, right, where somebody sits. But how many varieties of chairs do you have in the world? Infinite, right? And some of them, the way they are designed, are culturally based. You will say, as soon as you look at that, you say, no, it comes from China. So there are so many, in the sense, functionally they serve the same purpose, but I can put the elements together in an endless number of ways. So what happens if I create something? If I'm creating, that means okay, create can be characterized by simply multiple correct solutions. Correct solution. They all meet your functional requirements, but they're all correct. And if I ask such a question in the examination, can we ask that question? Why? Huh?
Everybody will like.
Yes.
Infinite possibilities.
Should. I train people to be creative.
Every answer can be correct.
Can be correct. So what happens is, if I give you a create type of question, because it has multiple correct answers, I should be able to evaluate the exactly whether it is performing that function and still correct or not. Not because it is agrees with what I am familiar with.
Evaluator should be aware of it.
Aware of it and should be capable of what you call going through the logic or whatever that is followed. The same thing about computer program. If I can write infinite number of ways, I have to follow the logic. But fortunately, there are some tools available. Okay, whether it is correctness or not can be evaluated for the program using some tools, that ICT tools that we have. But we don't want to go there. I want him to write only the area program in the way I have written on the board to calculate the area of a triangle. Period.
In that case, even a project outcome is not still a created.
Can be created.
Can be created. It can be, but it's not. Because it's again a similar copy from somewhere or it has been done with somebody.
Even if you have, create can be incremental many times. It doesn't mean that it is absolutely a novel thing, because you are using now other criteria to decide how creativity.
How created.
Okay. So as long as it meets your requirement. If you are able to meet that, and it is one of the many multiple solutions that I have, yes, I should be able to do that. For example, we tried this question, and even faculty got offended with it. solve, rather design an electronic circuit to perform a function in two different ways. That's all. Two different ways. And then in the workshop, everybody just burst up and say, no, this is not acceptable. Then to train somebody, that's what the programs and industrial design, product design, they do. They give you some simple exercise where they give you circles, simple, some 20 circles. And they ask you to create multiple, each one a different face. Okay? Now we are all familiar with smileys, so we are already familiar with the solution, so we create. But that is one of the standard exercises to train somebody to keep on thinking different.
So this can be an activity point for students.
Sure. And they will love it. If you give like that, say, come with your own solution, they will love it. But we don't want them to do it. Okay, so the sub-process here, there are 3 stages actually. One is generate. That means I should be able to generate multiple hypotheses or multiple solutions, first of all. But just because I have multiple solutions, that doesn't mean that I have already produced that complete solution. That part is planning. Planning or what you call design in our practice. The design, if you take the dictionary word, is to create a plan on a piece of paper. Okay? You are not actually building. That building is produced. The actual, so all the 3 are 3 you can confine create activity to any one of them also. You can do that. Okay? So, but once again, create is something that you cannot effectively. You can have some simple questions like give 2 solutions to a problem. Even that will you find as evaluator, you will find it difficult. Okay, these are the action verbs that you use. Develop alternative hypotheses, theories, explanations, or plan, design, or actually construct. Now, once again, we have another issue because of our practices. When we say design a circuit, is it create activity? Or design a being? Is it a create activity just because I use the word design? What happens is you are given a procedure how to come to the conclusion, and you are following that. So though we use, it looks like a appropriate word, but the design the way used in practically all engineering courses is nothing but apply.
But there may be unique design that can also be sometimes a creative one.
No, if there is a create is characterized by multiple possible correct solutions. And you should be willing to accordingly evaluate the student response. So the design in engineering, most of the engineering courses that we use, that phrase is only related to apply.
And what about the formulate? That word,
Hmm?
formulate.
Hmm.
Formulate following diagram into your own words, like that kind of a question.
Formulate the diagram.
That diagram.
Ah.
See, for algorithm question,
Ah.
2 railway track are there, they are mapping some point together.
Hmm.
Formulate that problem
Hmm.
into your own words. This is a question.
Okay, that we already explained, it comes under the understand category. That is, you are translating verbal description into some other form. That is the understand. Okay.
Not create.
Not clear. Okay, we'll take a break. We still have basically all read this. I can go on.
Yes.
Oh, sir.
Sir,
No, the again, once again, in fixed time examinations, you cannot include questions belonging to create. Even though when we use the word design, it is predominantly applied, not predominantly, it is practically is applied type of question only. So you can continue to use the word design a circuit, design a beam or some things like that. But be sure you can only categorize it as applied type of question. And you can only do the create questions through assignments, mini projects, major projects. Only those are the avenues available to you for for create activity. You can ask these questions in a slightly limited way and still claim that they can belong to the create category if you want. Okay? Ask questions like what are the possible consequences when something happens and so on. Again, back to the problem. For something that's not switched on. So coming to critical thinking, I have already explained. Uh, Critical thinking, according to those experts, at least we have those experts, we have to accept, right? People have been working for years and produced and discussed among themselves. Critical thinking involves analyzing, evaluating, and thinking with a view to improve, okay, which is a create activity. So when these three activities are involved, then you can consider it as critical. Whereas it's not that very simple with regard to problem solving. If you look at the literature, there are lots of books on problem solving. And when I look at them, they go from very low end, simple, like apply type of questions to all the level of create. So when you look at it, problem solving is referred to anywhere from right from understand, apply, analyze, evaluate to create process. So problem solving is not another category of another cognitive category. Now people also use the word higher order thinking, deep learning, meaningful learning. Once again, if you bring it to the level of revised Bloom's taxonomy, it is from the level of implement of apply to the other three levels. If those activities are involved, you can say you can use this word deep learning or meaningful learning. These words are all in use. So anytime if somebody says you have to involve higher orders of learning, you are not addressing higher orders of learning. It means if you are involved in this, yes. And nature of courses in any engineering program, most of the courses offered are designed and offered in a well-defined framework. All courses that you have. You may have opinion about the content. I don't know, maybe once again you have. It keeps changing. You may have opinion about the content of the course, but that is different. We are talking about they are offered well-defined framework. For example, I was sharing my experience. You take the most fundamental course in electrical networks. You call it network analysis. Van Valkenburg, he has written about 50 years ago, but that is still the standard textbook. The way it is written is totally, in my opinion, meaningless today to offer that. In either electrical or AC department. That in that form. Okay? He himself has written in the preface that it is a practical and applied mathematics course. But I want a course that is meaningful for electrical engineering and electronics. It is not framed like that. But you dare not touch that course. Okay, nobody will allow that. So you may have a different opinion on the content or the goals, but they are all given in a well-defined frame. Once you accept it, there is no second opinion about it. You don't ask a question, do you agree with this opinion or this assumption and so on. So that is applicable to practically all the engineering courses, including possibly the electives. Still, okay, yeah. No, the antenna issue. So, in all engineering courses, assessment items in class tests and semester examinations dominantly belong to remember, understand, apply cognitive skills. Okay. You have to prove to me through examples that you have a question really related to higher cognitive skills. You can do an analysis of all the question papers that you have. So you can't ask questions related belonging to evaluate, create category, right in the examination. But at least if you are able to take it, apply it properly up to that level, yes, you can still create a good assessment. And another issue is putting it in a little more, what do you call, high-level language. When the assessment context is identical to instructional context, that is, I solve a problem in the classroom and I ask the same problem in the examination. So, irrespective of what category that I solved in the classroom, it gets reduced to the number. Okay? So, one has to be cautious, and many times this conversion happens, what we call, without any conscious effort, without intention. But many times it happens also with intention. There may be even directive. Somebody will immediately declare that the difficulty level of your question paper has become very high, you have to reduce. So it's continuously changing for some contact issue. No? Yes. Right now it happens. Let's see here. Okay, this is, if you still have some questions, we can address them. Please, I know that you may have a lot of issues. Please record them. Record them, and if you are willing to share, maybe we'll see how to respond. Because one thing is, I consider your learning is never complete until you are able to write. You have not solved a problem until you put down your solution on a piece of paper. The thinking process is not complete. Okay, so writing is an excellent way of completing your understanding of the issue. Please do that. Practice writing and writing. Okay, we'll now go to the categories of knowledge. And there are some words in the world which we seem to be very comfortable until somebody asks you to define it. Knowledge is one such word. You don't have any issue about the word knowledge. But can you define what knowledge is? What constitutes knowledge? That becomes a philosophical question. And people have been trying to answer that for the past few thousand years. They have not come to the conclusion as yet. What constitutes knowledge? or what you call in philosophy epistemology of knowledge. It is not yet known. So we will not try to formally define what knowledge is. We will only give what we call, in such a case, we give operative definitions. Operative definition means for our purpose, I am calling this as knowledge. That's it. Okay. As we said, it's an enduring question of philosophy and psychology. Uh, and it is still evolving. What constitutes philosophically, still it's a major area of work for many philosophers about what constitutes knowledge. And now we call it operative definition. It may look a little more complex. We call it knowledge is organized and structured by the learner in line with cognitivist and constructivist tradition. Okay. Cognitivist we have looked at, we characterized. Constructivist means we are defining what do you mean by learning. Do we have a what do you call fully understandable definition of what constitutes learning?
Receiving information through our sensors and process receiving information from our surroundings and process those information in our neurons, and then after that we conclude a solution. That is the learning part.
Okay.
I'll give an example, sir. The first time a child or even me or you, we saw a red light at a traffic junction and we understood that it means stop. That's what we learned, and a collection of such learnings becomes a knowledge base.
No, we are not talking about what constitutes knowledge. What is meant by constructivist?
That is,
See, the one is we are constructing the knowledge from the information that we are receiving, either through our senses, all senses. We are constructing our own knowledge. So what, simple example, I'm one person saying something, but each one of you is relating this information to what you already have, what you already know. So sometimes because of that, that means each one has a filter, which that filter is constructed over your entire lifetime. Okay, and through that filter, when the new information goes, it kind of classifies it in its own way. Sometimes it rejects, and so on. So no two people will exactly translate that into your knowledge in the same way.
It's like experience. It is a
No, experience is something different.
no, sir.
But-
for a child, mother says that no, that lamp burns.
Yeah.
The burn is a word. But when the child, so when we try to prevent it, but when the child goes and touches the flame, then he knows what is the burn. Then next time,
No, that is where you are associating a word with certain experience. That I agree. The issue is each one of us are constructing our own knowledge. And unless you construct the knowledge on your own, it doesn't stay with you. If you are, that is the importance of constructivist. If you only remember briefly, that is you at the end of the semester, if you have, let's say after the exam is written, if you ask another question, say people already rejected it over, no, I'm not interested, it is irrelevant for me kind. That means it has briefly stayed in your memory and then got vanished because it is not related to your earlier knowledge that you have. Okay? So how do you make people learn better? The principles, there are lots of principles. Again, we don't have chance to look at them. You have to relate the new knowledge to your existing body of knowledge. And preferably in multiple ways. Preferably in multiple ways, multiple languages. If you are able to do that, possibly you will find a hook of the new knowledge to the existing body of knowledge. That's why intuitively many teachers, when they say something in the classroom, you repeat, right? You don't, but when you repeat, you try to use slightly different words. Hopefully, the implied thing is that you are trying to ensure at least some hook that student can find to link it new information to the existing body. And that is the reason why, in terms of planning any session in the classroom, the first part is what we call it activation. Activation of your prior knowledge. First, you bring it to the fore. So the student is now familiar with whatever he's understood, yeah, he has retained earlier, and then you try to relate the new information to that body of knowledge. That process is called activation. And this again, we teachers may do it intuitively. When you start a class, you will say, "This is what we have done in the last class," and maybe take a few minutes to repeat a few statements. But that exercise will have to be done much more consciously, much more in a structured way if you want to ensure that the student is able to construct his own knowledge. If he is not constructing, he is not retaining. It is only passed through your memory temporarily and then got lost. Okay? So that is the what we call cognitivist constructivist tradition is that. Okay, we will not spend more time. And also, knowledge is domain specific and contextualized. That means knowledge is not absolute as of now. It is contextualized. Okay, we will not get into too much of this. Okay, you have 4 categories of knowledge which are applicable to all subjects, any type of subject. We call it factual, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive. And I'm going to add additional categories that belong to engineering. And if you remove these engineering categories of knowledge, then you threw the engineering out. You converted your engineering program to science program. That is the standard activity. Okay. Now, factual part is simple to understand. Facts and figures that you are familiar with, and these you must know in any subject. You have to remember the facts. And factual knowledge consists of terminology, whatever terms that you use, words, numerals, signs, pictures, and all that. And also knowledge of specific details. Specific details can be descriptive details, like the specific gravity of iron is so much. Okay, there is a specific detail. And also prescriptive data, something that should be. The efficiency of something should be, transformer should be more than 95%. Okay, that is the prescriptive. So both prescriptive and descriptive details also come under the category of factual knowledge. Like if you talk about terminology, signal to noise ratio, what is the low pass filter, and some acronyms like VCDS, CCCS, power factor, etc. Specific details, power supply frequency in India is 50 Hz, is a specific detail. Semiconductor devices fare above 120 degrees centigrade. Bar grid array packaging can provide more than 200 input-output pins. These are all any number of such. Every subject, every discipline has whole bunch of these specific details which you have to remember. Okay, for you to work in that discipline, you have to have all the factual knowledge like this. Now comes the conceptual knowledge. Now this is, let me go back a little. I spend a little time. Okay, all of us faculty swear by the word concepts. Now, can you define what a concept is?
ID.
Hmm?
ID.
Idea.
Okay.
Then I will ask you what is an idea.
Facts.
Pardon?
Facts.
I didn't get it.
Facts.
Fact. Fact is, we just now said factual. Factual information is not concept. We just now talked about
Linking of the factual knowledge becomes a concept. Based on some rules.
okay. Let me. I will not comment on anything. Please give me more definitions.
Proved theory.
Generalization of knowledge.
Generalization of knowledge. Okay. Anything?
Proved theory.
Proved theory. Any other?
Fundamental building block of any
What is fundamental building block? You cannot say it in concept.
abstract idea.
Abstract idea. What is an abstract idea?
Which can be
Metafactual.
Okay, we will not debate each one, but only conclusion that I can draw from this is everybody has a different idea what a concept is, and yet we all agree concepts are important. So, don't you think, as faculty at least, we must have a reasonably similar, not exactly identical, similar definition of what is a concept for you to argue with somebody, even discuss with somebody.
This idea which we bring it to reality.
Okay. Then I will have to define, I will have to ask you to define the two words idea and reality.
The process how we bring the structure into reality.
The process is considered as concept.
No.
Hmm? No, what I'm saying, it's not with any other purpose. When you make a statement, you are using certain words and relating to them. And then each word should be very clear to other person as well as to you. What is it that I am referring to? So we have an issue with the word knowledge as well as concept. And both are important for us, as obviously in teaching and learning activities, right? Now, if you want a formal definition, which may not be very clear, we will come to that. A concept denotes all entities, phenomena, and their relations in a given category or class by using definitions. It's a formal definition. What does it mean? That is, first thing is, I'm giving a name to a group of objects. Okay? They can be abstract objects or concrete objects. But let us say take simple thing like a tree. Is tree a concept? It's a concept, right? What does it mean? When I look at something, I should be able to say whether it is a tree or not. That's all that I require. But then, no two trees are alike. There are an endless number of varieties of trees. We call all of them as trees, right? So, if I am able to recognize, say whether a particular object belongs to this category or not, then I understood the concept right. Okay? For example, I can further go down. I can call it a mango tree. That means now I am looking at a subset of trees. But even among mango trees, I have endless varieties. So I should be able to, when I look at something, I should be able to say whether it is a mango tree or not. For me, if I have understood that. For example, very quickly you will find when you get into the details, I may not be able to make the choice. May not be able to come to a conclusion. There are even nice jokes about it. A chair, for example. Somebody said, some office. The person said, I'm going to change all my furniture in the office. And then somebody came and changed all the furniture. And then the boss said, when the interior decorator, when he came to said, I'm feeling very uncomfortable in my chair, which doesn't seem to be good. Sir, you are sitting in a dustbin. Okay, so that means he is unable to differentiate between a dustbin and a concept. That is how he has created his furniture. So the concept of chair has kind of vanished there. Okay, so now concepts are abstract first. They're abstract. Tree is an abstract concept. That means I'm giving that name tree to a group of objects and anything, but if I am able to decide, I should be able to decide whether a given object belongs to that other. Right? That is the main issue. Concepts are abstract in that they omit the differences of the things in their extension. That is, when I say tree, I'm not differentiating between a coconut tree and a mango tree. Both are trees. So I'm not differentiating between the two. Okay? So like that I can keep on going down hierarchically to very, very detailed concepts. Now what happens, the concepts are also basic elements of propositions, much the same way word is a basic element of semantic element of a sentence. So I can have multiple concepts and start building relations among them. That is also conceptual knowledge. Let's look at some examples. So it includes knowledge of categories and classifications and the relations between among them. Like you say a standard example. Do you consider force is a concept? Force is a concept. Acceleration is a concept. Mass is a concept. Then I call it F equal to ma. That means I am taking three concepts and trying to create a relationship among them. Even that I call it a conceptual knowledge. That is the operative definition that we give. And sometimes we not only do that, we will put a set of those relationships and call it them by either as a theory or a schema or a model like Newton's laws of motion. So you refer those three concepts like that. Okay, all that we are considering under the category of conceptual knowledge. And what happens, these models and theories, they, right now, a particular subject matter is organized in one particular way. The way a subject matter is organized, let's say in civil engineering, may not be the way the subject matter in electronics or some area is organized. That is where you will have an issue of when you talk about multidisciplinary type of approach to something, you have an issue. In each subject of relevance, the knowledge is organized in a different way. And by the time you come to a common understanding, it takes a lot of effort. Because words mean something very different to each one of them. And so one of the first things that we have when a multidisciplinary team, they have to come to a common way of looking at things, which takes a lot of effort. Okay. So these are examples of conceptual knowledge: force, acceleration, velocity, mass, voltage, current, temperature, entropy, stress, strain. These are all. I'm sure every subject will have that. You can make a list of them. One simple exercise you can do in your subject: list all the concepts which you consider important. At least you are giving a label. And you can go to the level of like Kirchhoff's laws of thermodynamics, Newton's laws of motion. All these constitute conceptual knowledge. But the idea is you should know the limitation at every stage. And you are very And in fact, many times to test a person whether he understood a concept or not, you try to get an example on the periphery, there vaguely, whether it belongs to this class or not. Okay? If you are able to bring something, let's say I can identify something which is, let's say, can I differentiate between a plant and a tree? When does a plant become a tree? If I ask such questions, you will have to get into the details of that and come with the and you understand the concept of plant as well as concept of tree, right? So those are the types of exercises. If you can do it in the class with your students, you're making them understand the concept better. Now this is easier, procedural knowledge. Very is the knowledge of how to do something. It often takes the form of a series of sequence of steps to be followed, or like an algorithm, a series of steps, and it also includes the knowledge of the criteria used to determine when to use the procedure. We talk also about the procedure, and also when to use the procedure. Also, we consider as procedural knowledge. At least for our, as far as revised Bloom's taxonomy is concerned. And many times these procedures are also specific to a discipline. The same procedure I may not be able to apply in another discipline. So they become discipline specific as well. Solving matrix differential equation. You have a procedure to solve that. Or preparing a truth table for a logic expression, or drawing a Bode plot, designing a filter as per specifications. You have all procedures for that. Okay? Procedure to be followed. Now comes the
interdisciplinary type of
yes.
some of the procedures of a particular field become certain algorithms in a different field. Like for example, simulation annealing algorithm. Annealing is a process in the metallurgy, but whereas simulation annealing is an optimization technique, one of the algorithms.
Yeah, that is one is language issue is there because we use for want of adequate number of words, we keep borrowing from other disciplines. Somebody when he proposed that annealing algorithm, he thought it is somewhat similar to the way metallurgy people do annealing. That's all. So the words will
In
take.
fact, game created when two researchers on metallurgy and computer
Yeah,
science.
that's right. So they brought in that word, you don't anneal, you don't heat something and then cool it at a particular rate, your algorithm, right? But they brought it, they mentally thought that it is similar. So people keep doing that. For example, there are any number of words, take a bank, B-A-N-K. It means very different in different fields. It has practically nothing to do with the river bank or a banking of an aircraft or actually commercial bank. They don't have, we use the words, that is how it is evolved. Metacognition here is thinking about one's own thinking. Simple question, do I know this or not? Do I know whether I know or not? Even that is also, even that may not be sometimes clear. We think we know. But until we are asked to use that and do something with that, then we realize that we don't. That means our metacognition had been poor. Okay? Thinking about one's own thinking, that is metacognition. The ability to assess our own skills. Skills, knowledge, or learning. Can I assess myself? If I am not able to assess myself, I take wrong decisions. Okay? Another definition, a person's awareness of his or her own level of knowledge and thought process. That is a formal definition given by someone. For example, in the case of students, metacognitive ability affects how well and how long student studies. How long should I study to master something, to understand something, to solve, to acquire the ability to solve problems in that area? How much effort should I make? Should I do? That decision is a metacognition. I must practice, somebody will say, I must practice at least solve 10 different problems, slightly different problems until I understand. Somebody who is excellent with his abstract, uh, his cognitive ability, just looking at the formula, he may be able to solve all kinds of problems, right from abstract. But not everybody will have that ability. So, how much and how deeply students learn, that is metacognitive. It is a knowledge about cognition in general as well as awareness of knowledge about one's own cognition. That all this characterizes metacognition. For example, now why should I be concerned? Why should I be concerned with metacognitive knowledge? High performing students, it is observed, high performing students have better metacognitive skills. They are not trained for it. Somehow, right from the childhood, they have acquired that ability. We will not go through that development phases of that. But high performing students generally have uh, better metacognitive skills. And weaker students typically have poor metacognitions besides other things. So poor metacognition is an important element of weak students. So if you want to help weak students, really, you have to look at how is there a way that I can improve the metacognitive skills.
And it depends upon which part of the brain region is more
Why
active.
should you be worried about which part of the brain? No. Operationally, what is it that I can do? I'm not coming from physiology of the brain. One can come provided you either the teacher or everybody has the required knowledge related to that. Okay?
But it's a personal and variable kind of experience.
It is. It is very good.
So that is what.
Yes. So that's why no two students are alike. Okay? So poor metacognition is a big part of incompetence. You can make a conclusion like that.
Sir, this challenge we have in our complete education system, we keep on telling the students to measure in terms of what slow learners, medium learners, fast learners. And randomly we have rubrics where based on their assessment we do, but definitely it is not accurate.
It is improper also. Okay.
But is there something where you can throw a light? What would be the better way to really differentiate the students, set of students in a class, so that I can have an action plan for the slow learners? And we've been randomly doing this based on their
So
assessment.
that is true anywhere in the world because essentially the only way you can handle it is you have to address each student independently, which we cannot do obviously in a class. If you have 60 people, you cannot address that happened in Gurukul system. Yes, but Gurukul system operated in a different way. If the teacher, Guruji felt that you require another 3 years to complete your engineering degree, the student will accept. But not today. You have to complete your degree in 4 years. So we put all these restrictions. So this one-to-one interaction, one-to-one instruction will not work in the current context. But there is a whole lot of movements across the world to address this issue. There is even a formal organization called CAST, C-A-S-T. You can go to their website and see. It started with how do I support people with disabilities to come into the mainstream. They don't want to have a separate school, separate mechanism for only handling people with disability. They want them to work with regular students. So the CAST is an organization that is dedicated to that. Now, another word now is called UDL. sorry, I'm throwing the words. The UDL is Universal Design of Learning.
Universal design.
Of learning.
Ready.
Learning. Universal Design of Learning means how do I address with now the technologies are available to us. Using the available technologies, how do I achieve UDL? Okay. You require to do a lot of homework, but at least there is a pathway that is defined. It can be done. And the issue is when you design a UDL, you are not compromising on the goals. And in fact, what we do in our curricula, when a significant percentage of students are not performing well, what do? Normally, we don't touch the curriculum. Curriculum still will have to remain there. But I pull down the level of my assessment. Okay? So I keep pulling down the goal, essentially. I'm reducing the goal status to ensure that everybody passes. That is not the approach of UDL. Goals I do not compromise. I even make an assumption that all students are capable of achieving that goal. Now the only option that I have is how do I facilitate them to achieve that goal. That is the goal of UDL.
Even that also fails because you said the poor cognition and the student.
Yeah, but you have to address the poor cognition,
No,
poor metacognition.
Poor metacognition of the student
Yes.
level. Then we say that okay, he is given a technological this one where he can go it multiple times or try that multiple times. Even then, that fellow says that I have learned, according to the same thing.
And that is because you have told him already he doesn't have to learn through your assessment.
I know that he will do that exercise 2-3 times, and he will say that because the same exam for 2-3 times I'm doing, he will say that he
No, you are getting into the details. How exact? I'm only saying that you don't have a completely worked out solution is practiced everywhere. But universal design of learning, officially the goal is all students are capable of achieving the goal. We do not compromise on the goal, and you have the technologies available to facilitate them. Okay, and it can be done. Yes, we do not achieve that in one shot. We have to keep on iterating and work towards that because the contexts are different. We use the word instructional context. Instructional context is decided by so many factors. So one solution will not apply to all. Okay?
So can metacognition be measured? And if so, are there ways to improve it?
Yes, there
How
are.
can we measure it?
Yes, you
Right
can
now, it is
measure it.
being used in a different
The
type of
definition
children,
was, I
different
am assessing my
grade
understanding.
Yeah, there are methods. We will not go into that. There are methods, but it requires tremendous amount of effort using good tools. Keep on make the student respond to things. In fact,
No, sir, to do that, I have to understand that the student has a poor metacognition first. Only when I know that, then I try to see how to improve that. And is there a way to improve it?
yeah, we do that a little intuitively if we have tutorial. What is tutorial? Unfortunately, we converted tutorial also into another lecture session. Tutorial means one-to-one instruction. Okay? Tutoring means that one-to-one instruction. What true tutorial means, you give a set of problems to solve, and as the students are solving, you go around and look at each student what he is doing, and then you say, you give a feedback right at that point. You say, no, you made a wrong assumption, you are using the wrong value, and you have forgotten this, go and do that. So we give one-to-one instruction like that, we do it intuitively. But
And we're doing for everybody, not only for the targeted group.
not targeted group. For example, I don't know, the tradition of tutorials is gone practically. Okay, tutorial would only mean the teacher will solve more problems on the board, if at all. You are not making the students solve the problems. Only occasionally some people do. For example, IITs have a tradition. I don't know to what extent they're following. They have a tradition. And in fact, IIT Kanpur, where from I came, they have a tutorial complex. There are rooms designed separately in that building where smaller number of students can sit, where the tutor, who is also another faculty member, especially large classes, where, for example, in first year, they have something like 500, 600 students sitting in the classroom. One assistant professor may be giving the lectures, but a professor can be teaching assistant in that. And a teaching assistant, as in US tradition also, generally you have 20 students per teaching assistant. And they conduct the tutorials. When you are conducting the tutorial, you are giving one-to-one input to each student. That is the concept of tutorial. But they destroyed it long time back.
But still we include in our design of the curriculum.
Yes, you do.
NPT.
Yes, we do. But we have freedom to interpret what tutorial means. We are not. But this is somehow along the line, somewhere it got changed. Either we overloaded the curriculum, because I 3 lectures that I am given are not sufficient. I will convert my tutorial class into also a lecture. So if you stay with tutorial is essentially that of where at least metacognitive issues to a limited extent are addressed. Oh, it's already lunchtime. Huh?
If there is anything else you want to make a logical stop, we can continue. Or we can stop.
Yeah, after metacognition, we will stop and so students with poor metacognitive skills will often shorten their study time prematurely, thinking that they have mastered the course material that they barely know. It's a common again issue. Oh, 3 days before the exam is sufficient to write the exam, right? So that is a poor metacognition. Are grossly overconfident in their level of understanding. They have understood what is it real about it. Or they either underestimate or overestimate their performance in tests. You can ask them at the end of the test, everybody says, no, I'm going to get 70 marks in this or 80 marks in this. And it is also a fashion to say for some students, no, I have not performed well. Okay, but barring that, the fashionableness, people can also wrongly estimate. They'll go and say, yes, I'm going to get 90%, but he gets 9 marks. Okay, you can have such situations. That means if you have such indicators, it shows poor metacognition. And again, they make poor study decisions. Now, categories of metacognitive knowledge, if you want to further go into that, assessing the task at hand. Let us say I have to learn how to solve a matrix differential equation. That is my task. Okay, how much he has to estimate for himself based on his present knowledge. How much effort does he have to put? That is one part. Okay, the other one is what evaluating one's own strengths and weaknesses, and also you have to plan an approach if you have to master solving matrix differential equation. Somebody will have to say you have to understand this concept well, this procedure, and then this is the sequence of procedures involved, and for each one you have to estimate how much time they require. If one should be able to look at that level of detail, maybe it is not writing on a piece of paper, but mentally you should be able to think along those lines and then estimate, yes, I require to spend about 10 hours to really solve properly matrix differential. Whether the 10 hours is given in 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, that is a different issue. But I require 10 hours of effort. If he's capable of making that estimate approximately, then his metacognitive knowledge is good. Applying strategies and monitoring performance. So one is, what is the strategy that I want to follow to go there? And as I am going there, am I able to monitor myself? Yes, I have mastered up to this. I think I can go to the next step. So that ability to monitor one's own progress is also metacognitive. And reflecting and adjusting one's own approach. You reflect, you have done. For example, one of the ways to change the approach, yes, when I'm trying to work by myself, somehow it doesn't seem to be working. Can I go and consult my friend? Can I ask my friend to help me with this? Even that ability to decide when to go to a friend, or maybe the next level, I think I need to go and talk to the teacher and request him whether he can give me a little time. Even that is also metacognitive knowledge. That means you are willing, you are capable of monitoring yourself, your progress, and you are capable of changing your approach to reach your goal. That is comes only through reflection. And reflective thinking is a very important part of teaching and learning. Okay? And you may have funny beliefs about intelligence and learning. That also is a problem. If you have funny beliefs which come from all kinds of sources, then obviously you cannot progress. Okay. So metacognition can increase student engagement. Because if engagement is the central issue of good learning, then metacognition leads to it. And metacognition has the potential to empower students to take charge of their own learning and to increase the meaningfulness of students. So it's not addressed through giving a few more lectures. And that is where the problem lies. How do you make it happen? Okay, we'll pause here and continue that.
So, actually what I observed, the students who are, I'm not saying weaker or, they have some backlogs also, papers. And he has got a regular exam also. So sometimes it quite happens that he has got a very important paper and then the backlog is also there. So that sort of get divided into the system. I'm not saying that he is not capable enough. His performance will be divided into two sections. That is one thing.
Yeah.
Earlier now, sir introduced a system called model exam. Before the main exam comes in the CAE, there is only one model exam like main exam, 3 hours exam. But anyhow, it stops. So I don't know whether it can help. Your opinion about the model exam. 3 years.
I will not talk about model exams right now, but those are what do you call scheduling issues.
Yeah.
Scheduling issues, then you can't also schedule to satisfy everyone in every possible situation. So you will have to say, let's say, every family has that issue, right? You have to take your children to school, you have to go to the office, there is a deadline coming. So all this happens in everybody's life. So you cannot produce a solution that is universal kind of.
It needs a lot of planning, it seems. Very good planning.
I've been listening many times all these great top IT companies when they start recruiting the people, they used to do normal process of testing their aptitude, comes a lot of things in that aptitude, cognitive. Now all these top product companies now they are told that I am going to measure the people at different cognitive levels.
We have talked about 6 cognitive levels. Yes,
Is it the same thing they have designed?
I think so. There should be. When you say cognitive levels, I have 6 cognitive levels.
Is it
Unless he wants to use some other taxonomy, which I don't. These days, I think if you look at the entire world, 80% of the people use the Bloom's taxonomy.
Probably they would have designed the complete questionnaire and the levels of interviews based on this.
Yes, they will. Any other issues, please? Yeah, excellent.
We'll go for lunch.
1 hour.
We'll back by 2.
Two.
By 2. We are back by 2.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Students.